How did this farmer become the most feared sniper in history and earn the nickname White Death after slaying hundreds of people? It all started during the Winter War in 1939, where a soon-to-be deadly man named Simo served as a sniper for the Finnish army. But he wasn't like the rest of the snipers and was so good at hiding he literally caused paranoia in the entire Soviet army. But how? First off, he never stayed in place or in a sniper nest. Instead, he lurked in the forest by himself, burrowing himself under the snow in a white camouflage suit, making him practically invisible. And every time he took out a few targets, he would move. He would also snipe without a scope, preventing glints, and was an experienced hunter knowing all the best spots. Becoming such a threat, the Soviets began sending entire artillery barrages near random areas in the woods hoping to hit him, and even had an entire sniper force specifically looking for him. But they still had no luck, continuing to take out hundreds of more soldiers, making the Soviets terrified of the woods. Until one day, a Soviet finally spotted him, taking an explosive round to the jaw, being pulled out of the war and somehow still making a full recovery, with a total of 500 confirmed fatalities. These are 10 weird things you didn't know about Cleopatra. First off, she had a secret drinking club called the Inimitable Livers, hosting feasts or parties where everyone drank tons of alcohol, showed off luxury, and reportedly disguised as civilians wandering the streets plastered, pranking, or messing with random strangers. Next, Cleopatra loved to enter places dramatically. More specifically for important meetings, she would arrive on a massive decorated barge with purple sails, gold everywhere, dressed like a goddess, perfume or incense in the air, and had music playing. But it gets crazier. She was only about 18 when she became queen, turned into one of the most powerful and richest women in ancient history, spoke 9 different languages, and actually wasn't praised for her beauty, but more for her extreme intelligence, personality, and smooth voice that could apparently charm anyone. Even more insane, she married 2 of her younger brothers, but both later died after conflicts with her. She would test poison on prisoners to see which ones were the quickest, most painless, or didn't ruin your appearance. One time dissolved a pearl in her drink and chugged it for a bet, and even stuffed herself inside of a bundle of bedding to secretly meet with Julius Caesar and secure her throne. But the most insane, Cleopatra wasn't even Egyptian. She was Greek and was alive closer to the invention of the iPhone than the actual building of the pyramids. How did this cat survive a sinking ship, then another, and another, every time it should have died? It all began during a World War II naval attack on a German battleship with a stray cat on board. A critical part of the ship being struck, sinking in the middle of the Atlantic, killing 2,000 soldiers, only leaving 115 survivors. But somehow, the cat survived, clinging onto a piece of wood rescued by British sailors. And this was only the beginning. They took the cat on their own ship with food, shelter, and even named him Oscar. Everything was perfect. Until suddenly, the ship was torpedoed by a German U-boat. A massive explosion ripped through the ship, killing 150 soldiers instantly. But against all odds, Oscar survived, eventually being moved to a safer ship this time. Back to being a mascot with food and shelter, nothing could go wrong. Then out of nowhere, another German U-boat torpedoed the ship, ripping a hole through it. Everyone forced to quickly evacuate, but this time, Oscar wasn't spotted. The ship fully sinking with no sign of the cat. The rescuers searched the wreckage, finding nothing. But then in the distance, clinging onto a small piece of wood, once again, was Oscar, according to the legend, earning the new name Unsinkable Sam. If you stand under this tree for shade, it can literally kill you. Meet the Maginot Tree, the world's most dangerous tree where nearly every single part of it can take you out. But how? Well, let's start with the fruit. These trees grow an apple-like fruit that you would think is harmless, looking and smelling delicious. But it only takes one bite, and you'll find out they're highly toxic, causing an extremely intense burning in your mouth and throat, along with stinging so painful it's described to feel like swallowing broken glass. But it only gets worse. Let's move on to the tree itself. Every single part of this tree, from the bark, branches, and even the leaves, have this white milky sap inside. Looks normal, but is so toxic that touching the tree anywhere can cause extremely painful skin irritation and severe blistering. And you don't even have to touch a tree, because if one catches fire, the smoke is almost like a toxic gas bomb, causing painful eye irritation, partial blindness, or respiratory problems. Now worst of all, not only does it hold the Guinness World Record for being the world's most dangerous tree, but simply walking past one or standing under it can put you at risk, as all it takes is a little bit of rain and the droplets can mix with the toxic sap, creating a poisonous shower dripping right onto you. Did you know that penguins can propose and actually get married to each other just by using a rock? The first step is during mating season, where the male penguin will search the crowd looking for a female he likes. Once he has a crush, he'll remember their face, going out on a mission looking for the most perfect pebble he can find. When searching, they try to look for ones that are smooth, shiny, have a flat surface, and are clean. Once they find this special rock, the penguin will carry it in their beak all the way back to their crush, where it all comes down to a moment of truth, at which the male penguin will simply walk up to the female and lay the stone down at her feet. If she doesn't pick up the rock, that means she's not interested or already taken, which can cause the male to panic, constantly dropping more pebbles hoping she changes her mind. Or sometimes their mate might see this and attack the other penguin. But on the other hand, if she does pick up the pebble, it's a yes, where they will then spend the next few days building a nest together, then raising an entire family for months until they grow up, meeting each other again every single mating season. How did this singular pigeon save over 190 people's lives? It all started during World War I, where the US Army was surrounded by the Germans and accidentally getting bombed by their own artillery since communications were down. With no way to escape, their only hope was to risk using carrier pigeons trained to deliver messages, attaching a note begging to stop the artillery, and sending out the first few pigeons praying they made it. But the Germans knew their tactics, shooting any pigeon they saw out of the air, where every single one of the pigeons died so far, all coming down to one final pigeon named Shirami, attaching the message and releasing him, flying into the battlefield with no problems at first, until Shirami was shot in the chest and fell from the sky. The artillery continued taking out hundreds of men, down to the last 200 soldiers out of 500. They thought it was all over and lost all of their hope, when suddenly everything fell silent. The artillery had stopped, because what they didn't know is Shirami survived, flying over 25 miles through enemy fire with a bullet wound and a missing leg after getting shot again, making it to headquarters and successfully delivering the message, saving their lives. Have you ever wondered how we domesticated dogs and turned them into a man's best friend? It all started about 30,000 years ago, where humans and wolves were pretty much enemies. Wolves would always try to sneak up on humans and try to scavenge leftover bones and food, and humans would typically kill or chase them away since they were aggressive. But sometimes there were wolves that weren't aggressive and simply stood near camps without bothering them. Noticing this, humans would only give the calm ones more food, and since they actually helped scare away predators and even warn us when something was near, we didn't mind them. Where these calm wolves began shadowing around humans all the time, and also helped us hunt, sharing the catch. And over time, we got so used to these wolves, we even began letting them live with us, only breeding and helping the ones with calm genetics and fighting off the aggressive ones. And throughout multiple generations of breeding, humans pretty much reshaped wolves' DNA to be friendlier towards us, and thousands of years later slowly became the dogs that we have today. Blackbeard was far more disturbing than you were told, and was so feared that entire ships would surrender just after seeing him. But how is this possible? First reason, Blackbeard would psychologically torture you. Unlike normal pirates, Blackbeard was a master at fear tactics, known to randomly fire off cannons or even shoot his own crewmates. He stood at 6'4", towering over his entire crew, wearing darker clothing and was extremely unpredictable. But that's not even why he was so scary, because his main goal wasn't just to steal from your ship, but traumatize you as much as possible. He would follow your ship for multiple hours, standing completely motionless, staring at you as he caught up. On top of that, he would put fuses in his hat and beard to look like a demon chasing after you, where most ships would immediately surrender after seeing this without having to fire a single shot. But it gets worse once he boards your ship. Instead of killing, he would rather give you extreme trauma, mocking you with weapons, destroying your ship, and making loud noises, all while stealing everything. Once you're mentally destroyed, he'll let you go just so you can tell stories about him. This tactic caused so much fear around his name, sailors would cancel their trips just after hearing rumors, or would even be scared to say his name at sea. At one point, becoming so powerful, he was able to block and take an entire port hostage, giving him everything he demanded for an entire week straight just so he would leave. Throughout his career, stealing over a dozen ships and fortunes of loot. But eventually all of this terror would come to an end after the British naval force finally decided to step in, where Blackbeard would fight to the end, taking 5 bullet wounds and over 20 sword slashes before finally going down. Have you ever wondered why everyone is horrified of the North Sentinel Island and is impossible for you to enter without being killed? Why is this? Well, on this remote island in the Bay of Bengal lives a dangerous indigenous tribe called the North Sentinelese, who've been isolated on this island for 60,000 years with almost zero contact with other humans. Their language is completely unknown and their culture is still a mystery, where to this day no one knows how or why they got there. But how are they dangerous? Well, they're known to be extremely violent towards outsiders, attacking anyone that goes near the island, doing things like shooting at boats and aircrafts passing by without any warning, one time shooting a rescue helicopter trying to help them after a tsunami, and even reportedly shot at a National Geographic film crew, hitting the director in the leg. But much worse, many people died trying to visit them. In 2018, a religious missionary attempted to preach to them, but moments later his body was seen being dragged along the beach. And in 2006, 2 fishermen docked on the islands, not realizing the danger, being ambushed, and were never seen again. And despite the technology and power we have today, we still cannot go near the island, because one simple visit from us could spread diseases their bodies can't handle, wiping out hundreds of innocent people who live there. So it's best to just leave them alone. These are the terrifying steps you would face if you got chosen to fight in the Colosseum. First, Roman guards would break down your door and pull you out of your home. If you couldn't pay your debt, were a criminal, or even a slave, you could get chosen at any random moment. Next, they would shackle you up and drag you through the streets, scraping your entire body as they made their way towards the Colosseum. But it gets more brutal. They'll then march around with your body through crowded streets as an example, letting people spit or hit you as they dragged you everywhere. And eventually, you would be taken underneath the Colosseum, pulling you through a dark hallway into a holding cell with nothing in it except a cold floor, forcing you to stay in the cell for multiple days or even weeks as they decided your fate and advertised your upcoming fight. And it was nearly impossible for you to sleep, hearing the crowd chanting all day and people dying directly above your head. Even at night, you would hear wild animals as they kept them in the same room as prisoners. Next, after all this waiting, on a random day, they'll suddenly unlock your door and pull you out. You're now about to discover your fate. If they gave you weapons and armor, you could possibly be a gladiator, fighting other prisoners, having the best chance at survival. But if they handed you a dull wooden sword or a towel, your life was already over, facing the punishment called dominatio ad bestias, being thrown into one final small pitch black cell, hearing the crowd roaring around you, praying to fight something easy, eventually opening the door in front of you, walking out and seeing a crowd of over 50,000 people cheering for your death. And in a moment of truth, the Roman guards will raise a small platform within the Colosseum, being met with whatever animal you have to face, which they specifically starved and agitated. You could try to fight back, but the best thing you could do is accept your fate. Jack the Ripper was far more disturbing than you thought, and was so horrifying he made entire cities afraid to sleep at night. But how is this possible? First reason, all of his murders happened in the same area. Each body was found within walking distance from each other, all killed inside of a small 1-mile radius, and was somehow never seen. But it gets more disturbing. He would hunt his victims at around midnight to 4 AM, making him almost invisible, purposely attacking in dark or dimly lit areas, and would only last minutes, leaving before anyone could see him. And when the bodies were found, it wasn't just stabs. Some were left unrecognizable, cut open, or found with almost perfectly surgical cuts, missing organs. But he doesn't stop there. After every murder, letters claiming to be from Jack the Ripper would be sent to police and officials, mocking or describing the murder in graphic detail. One official even received a message with a piece of human kidney alongside. Even worse, he didn't wear a top hat or a cape like it was said, but rather looked completely normal, meaning it could be anyone, which sent London into a full panic. People were terrified to sleep at night and patrolled the streets in groups looking just for him. On top of this, he would barely leave any clues or evidence behind, where police had to investigate thousands of different people and hundreds of different suspects, even including a woman later nicknamed Jill the Ripper. Still, nothing helped. But the darkest of all, there's only 5 victims we know about, with the possibility of much more, which he all did in the span of only 10 weeks, suddenly stopping in November 1888, where still to this day, no one 100% knows who Jack the Ripper is. Imagine you walked outside and saw dozens of your neighbors violently dancing until their feet bled and collapsed unconscious. This actually happened in 1518 in a town called Strasbourg. All starting with this woman right here named Frau Trophia, one day randomly walking outside of her house and dancing in the streets. At first, people thought nothing of it. Maybe she just liked dancing or was a little bit crazy. But this is where things got weird. As hours passed, she just didn't stop, looking completely exhausted, drenched in sweat, and somehow kept moving all throughout day and night. And it only got worse, because people strangely started joining her, one by one, dancing in this weird trance-like state. Still, it was only a few people, so no one too concerned yet. But as days passed, not only weren't they stopping, but people kept joining in, at one point reaching dozens of people. Now the town was worried, hoping they would just eventually stop on their own. But no. Their feet became bloody and bruised, bodies on the brink of collapsing. People tried dragging them away, holding them still, giving them food and water, taking them to church, and even built a stage with music playing to hopefully dance the sickness out. But nothing they tried was working, only stopping unless they physically collapsed. Some even reportedly dying from exhaustion, where this would go on for multiple months, starting in July, slowly fading out around early September, with 400 infected people in total, whether it was mass hysteria, poisoning, or mental illness. To this day, we still don't know the exact reason for the dancing plague. Did you know that one of the world's deadliest viruses is actually on your side? Meet the bacteriophage, a lethal virus that's hunting in your body right now. But how come this doesn't kill you? Well, first reason, unlike normal viruses, bacteriophages don't hunt your healthy cells. They hunt bacteria. And the way they kill is horrifying, all beginning when a phage lands on a bacteria cell in your body. Using tiny leg-like fibers, it locks onto the surface. Then with sharp spikes underneath its body, it pierces straight through the bacteria, pushing down until it fully locks in place. And it only gets worse. A tube connected to the phage's head filled with DNA then pushes through the surface, injecting its own DNA straight into the bacteria, essentially hijacking the bacteria's machinery, turning it into its own factory, forcing it to create dozens or sometimes hundreds of clones of the phage inside itself, until eventually there's so many bacteriophage copies inside that the bacteria literally explodes, where a whole new army of bacteriophage burst out ready to kill more bacteria just for you, all happening within inside your body right now.